They were taught by a teacher who herself had not attained more than a grade school education. Now, this experience caused me to think about the comparison of my own upbringing. I was a privileged woman and had a fortunate station in life, one that also allowed me to use that blessing that God had given me to help others. Now, education is in my soul. I was born to a professor of mathematics and an intelligent and passionate woman. I was practically raised on the University of Georgia campus itself. And later, and later I would even marry myself a professor. But it was my mother who insisted that her daughters have some form of higher learning. And so she decided to write an anonymous letter to the editor of the Southern Banner in Athens, calling for the education of our girls, so she said. Now, she argued that the female mind was capable of attaining the highest cultivation, and she called for vigorous measures to have an institute that would rival the reputation of the University of Georgia itself. Well, there was at least one interested reader, that of Mr. T.R.R. Cobb, and perhaps unknowingly he recognized the voice of this writer, for it was his own sister, my mother. Now, my uncle quickly set into motion the steps to create the Lucy Cobb Institute, named after his own dear daughter, who tragically would not see the day to attend the school herself due to scarlet fever. And I believe this tragedy motivated my uncle and my mother to create a legacy worthy of dear Lucy's innocent life. My mother was positioned as the Institute's first director, and my sister and I, Mildred and I, we attended and graduated with honors, I might add. Of course, there was a time during the war when the school had to close, and my father became my tutor, the strictest teacher I ever had, and yet some of the most valuable lessons of my entire life. And so, my sister Mildred and I, we did follow in our parents' footsteps to serve in education, with Mildred becoming the director of the Lucy Cobb Institute, and I, the principal. Now, when I look back on my days as a student at the Institute, as a Lucy, as we were called, I don't think that at that time I realized the fortunate circumstances that I had as a woman to attain a higher education, to embolden our minds. But thanks to the Institute, I grew from a young lady into an educated woman. And I knew that God had blessed me and put me on a path to use that blessing for good. But he didn't intend for me to go it alone. I told you I married myself a professor now, didn't I? Francis Lipscomb. He was a professor of ancient languages and English literature. And I knew that to be so because Francis spoke the language of my heart and my mind. The depth of love that we had, I will cherish it forever. Lengthy conversations of Shakespeare, our ambitions for the community, and of course the occasional intellectual disagreement. Now, we were very blessed to have 3 beautiful and healthy children. I only wish that Francis could have seen them grow into adulthood. When he served in the war, he grew very ill, and he did not recover. 5 years we had together. 5 years of cherished memories and moments that have gotten me through my darkest ours as well. And for that I am thankful. Now I was a widowed mother with 3 children to support. And so I had taken a position as a teacher at Waverly College in Washington, D.C. Now these were very formative years for me. Going from being the student to the teacher is quite a difference, I found. But the challenge of being away from our home also was very hard. But I will never forget the lesson that God had given me in being an educator among these students. But home would come calling, specifically my sister Mildred would come calling, and offered me the position of principal at the Lucy Cobb Institute. Now, having understood just a little bit at least of the experience of working women, I have to admit I grew quite frustrated with the lack of support from our government and our school systems. And I decided to put that frustration into action. And along with 4 other reputable and passionate women, we formed the Athens Women's Club. And much of our ambitions had to do with education. We started out by simply trying to raise funds for much needed school supplies, books, papers, pencils, and the like for our rural schools in Athens. And then our ambitions grew greater, for we grew quite angered by the horrid conditions of the mills. To have child labor laws that allowed the Georgia Industrial Association to send children into the mills when they should have been in the schoolhouse. We campaigned for kindergarten programs for working mothers, both white and black, and we wrote extensively, I can tell you, through our newspapers, our government, and our school system. But I still felt that something more must be done, and that is when, in 1906, I approached this convention, and you women furthered our cause. And shortly after, it was when I went back to the hills of Tallulah with my granddaughters, and something in me decided that with these mountain children playing with my granddaughters, we might as well engage them in a reading lesson. And they took to it quite well. From those pallid faces, I saw sparkling eyes of curiosity. They were interested students. I knew that it was going to take more than writing letters, more than supplies. It was going to take people, good people, and hard work. And quite a bit of persuasion, as I was to find out. You see, these families, they relied on their children for farm work to survive and not schoolwork. So I took it upon myself to visit with each and every one of the families in Tallulah, and I firsthand saw the conditions in which these children were living. Some primitive cabins, some almost like shelters themselves. And I realized that I did not know their struggle. I did not know truly their experience, for I had never felt that desperation. And so I invited each family to come to my cottage and to listen to my ambitions for a school. And as you can imagine, an outsider coming in and insisting upon a project of much hard work and sacrifice was not immediately welcome. But after I listened, I found what this school needed. This was not no ordinary school. This school in Tallulah Falls would be a school for Tallulah Falls. More than grammar, arithmetic, literature, and the arts, very important, yes. But what these students needed, what this community needed, was education and how to grow and cook nourishing foods for the body, skills and a trade to sustain oneself and one's family, and a spiritual education to fortify their moral character. Well, now the family's on my side. A fire was lit within me, and the path was laid before me, whereupon I met many good and passionate women, and even a few helpful men. I went before in Athens. I decided that we needed some kind of fundraising effort, and had two young ladies, Miss Lily and Sarah Moss it was, well, they put on a charming little entertainment called All Around the World, which raised $62. And did gain us a lengthy list of subscribers to our cause, but so much more would be needed. I knew where I had to go next before all of you good women, and you were the women who made it so. You raised the funds for our building, our initial equipment, our teachers, our supplies, and it was Sarah White of Tallulah itself who contributed 5 beautiful acres of land. Now, in such short summary, that sounds pretty easy now, doesn't it? I can tell you, I was mighty proud and mighty relieved to finally see that opening day of the Tallulah Falls Industrial School on June 30th, 1909. I guarantee the entire population of Tallulah Falls was there for the opening ceremony. I saw families coming in on their wagons, children riding in on their mules, and many were walking together, all toward a brighter future. Oh, and when the children went inside the school, what joy they had, the spark in those eyes. And when they saw the piano, oh, what cheer. But I think the most touching moment for me was seeing all of those 22 pupils sitting attentively at their desks, in their classroom, at their school. Now, by December, the word had spread. We already grew to 66 students and 4 teachers. It was one of the most memorable Christmas experiences that I ever had, as this was the first Christmas celebration, truly, that these children and families had. We had a cedar Christmas tree. They decorated with popcorn and paper strings. And the children even made presents for their families using the skills they had learned at the school. Needlework, woodwork, pin cushions, baskets, and the like. I can't tell you the pride that I saw in those parents' eyes. And so the spirit of our school, it was spreading, I tell you. And with generous hearts also came generous hands, and many items were donated. In fact, we were able to expand to 2 buildings. We had ourselves a full kitchen, a workshop, a reed organ, a Victrola, which children loved, a full set of china, I recall, library books, and the tools, the trees, and the expertise for an apple orchard. We had grown to over 100 students by this point, still with our 4 teachers, and a glee club, and a weekly Sunday school class. And as I stand here today in 1914, well, I am growing frail despite the energy that all of these children give me. My doctor says that I ought to step down, and I am listening to him, though I tell him that it's just that my heart cannot take so much joy. So for all of you, I wish to bring you back to that room above the jail where we began and ask you, was all of this worth it? And I think we have a resounding yes. Yes. So my ladies, I hope that you will all go back to your individual communities and see what need does your community have. What can you do to serve? What skills can you offer? What interests and hobbies can you offer? And make it so. And I tell you that the reward will come to you. Please, I do ask that you make me proud. Thank you.